Welcome back. District judge is reaching out to Ripple to ask for some consent. We're going to get into that. And Coinbase is now being sued by actual XRP holders. And this just gets more interesting by the day. And there's even more lawsuit news sweeping across the crypto space. Let's just roll that beautiful intro and get into this thing. Here we go.
This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove at the top of the screen and everything that we're talking about here today. Shout out to David Gokhshtein and shout out to David Schwartz, who made a surprise drop-in visit during David Gokhshtein's live show, Unfiltered. And of course, he wasn't allowed, and David G was very, very classy and telling him, look, I'm not going to ask you anything about the lawsuit or anything that I know you can't speak on. But it was just nice because I felt like David Schwartz really was just like, hey, I know the comps team will probably give me some trouble over this or just give me a bunch of raft of mess saying I shouldn't have done it. But it's better to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And he's right. And he did the same thing for us when we were at Swell as well. So shout out to David G for having David Schwartz show up there, just as support, really to the whole idea of what's happening here. And I just thought it was a very classy thing of David S to do. And I'm happy for David G that he was able to have him on the show. Now let's get right to it because there's a lot happening. And I think it all is correlating together at what is taking place in this crypto space. And I think it's important to not only pay attention to the details of what's going on with the Ripple lawsuit with SEC, but I think it's important to pay attention to what's happening across this space broadly. And this is a reminder of that. This is from Crypto Whale in my video from 3 days ago. And basically, it is a $1.4 trillion lawsuit against Tether. It is 1,000% larger than Ripple's tiny little $1.3 billion SEC lawsuit. And I tell you that this is a big deal because Tether is what is really used broadly in the crypto space on almost every exchange, if not every exchange. So U.S. regulators are considering new legislation that will define stablecoins as security. If the bill is adopted, Tether will likely face a lawsuit from the SEC. Well, they're already facing it. Well, Sir Gordon Gekko's rightfully so says here the dominoes are falling, and the dominoes are falling. Shout out to Sir Gordon. New York Attorney General says Bitfinex is really seeks a letter to extend an injunction here, and it says which bars Tether from loaning Bitfinex any further funds to January 15, 2021. The date has previously been extended on multiple occasions and is again expected to expire this week before the documents are provided. Now, the NYAG has alleged Bitfinex attempted to cover up $850 million in funds held on behalf of customers via payment processor Crypto Capital, and that it secretly borrowed the shortfall from sister firm Tether's reserves. That's a problem. And listen, again, we're going to get to Coinbase, we're going to get to SEC and Ripple and some points we need to make there and really bring out. But I want you to really know that we got to pay attention to what's going on all across the board here. So Tether, which was the standard stable coin from almost every exchange, is now under a $1.4 trillion lawsuit. Might want to write that one down. Now, here we see even more evidence here that the U.S. Treasury is to consider stablecoins as security. Now, let's get into this for a second. Make no mistake, the day that Tether gets taken down will be apocalyptic. Crypto markets will seize, exchanges will be thrown into disarray, millions of crypto traders will likely have their assets frozen, and prices everywhere will plummet. It will be pronounced yet another death for Bitcoin. And now this is coming from Dragonfly Capital Manager partner Hasib Qureshi. Now, if you look a little further here, it says FX Street previously reported Tether may be too big to fail as the industry has become too dependent on USDT. However, Hasib Tether woes won't kill the industry, but rather make it stronger. Listen to this. But it always does. Crypto will eventually recover, and when the dust settles, we'll enter the third stage of crypto money, he said. Listen to this. The experts believe that the digital dollar may come to replace the USD or USD Tether. Did you hear that? The experts believe that the digital dollar may come to replace USD Tether. The cryptocurrency markets will quickly adapt to the new standard to be able to get back to business, meaning that the authorities will successfully complete the mission of regaining control over the parallel financial system. I'm sorry. Is this on? You up this morning? I'm telling you, you better pay attention to the whole crypto space, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's going on while we're dealing with the Ripple SEC lawsuit. You're about to see the digital dollar ushered in and replace USD Tether. Hence, $1.4 trillion lawsuit. Come to hell on in. I hope that's not washing over anybody. That's a big deal. All right. Zappos to discontinue services to U.S. customers in March due to the change in our global business strategy. Yeah, and the recent lawsuits that are going out like invitations to a party. This doesn't end here, obviously, right? Then we know that it's Bitstamp and Coinbase and it's Bitwise and Bittrex and Binance US, right? They're all at this point saying, hey, we're halting trading till this gets sussed out. And then you have the next layer, wave of things that come to that from a ripple effect, if you will. Coinbase is now being sued over XRP commissions after the SEC pursues Ripple. This is how it goes. The dominoes are falling. This is snowball effect. Once this ball gets rolling, then you got this person wants to sue that person wants to sue this person, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba. I think this bodes well for the fact that we need a resolution because they're not going to tank the entire space. Now, they certainly are going to cut the legs out from underneath of it. And I'll tell you something. If you're a maximalist in this space, you should take this opportunity to maybe change your perspective, especially if you're a Bitcoin maxi right now. Someone might want to call Anthony Pompliano and explain to him what it means that USD Tether is under a $1.4 trillion lawsuit, because that is how Bitcoin gets pumped up so hard. Well, I'm just saying. And if this guy knows here, and I just have a YouTube channel, what is it you think they actually know for actually suing them for $1.4 trillion? So there's trouble coming. Lucy, you got some splaining to do. So look, when this comes down to this, what I'm seeing here is that this is about cleaning house once and for all and installing the regulatory framework and the products and services that they want where they need to be, which means I see USD Tether in a lot of trouble. And I see the introduction of what will be a digital dollar, maybe the USDC, right? That is what Brian Brooks and Jeremy Allairs worked on. And Brian Brooks, when he was at Coinbase, and then said to Jeremy Allairs in an interview, now that he is at the OCC, that he absolutely feels like, that was one of the most important projects that they have worked on ever. Right? And then I want to talk about this idea, dereliction of duty, because that's what we're witnessing from the SEC with the actual lawsuit with Ripple, is dereliction of duty. That's right. The shameful failure to fulfill one's obligations, negligence, neglect, delinquency, failure. In fact, we can go a step further and prove that they were complicit in actually helping Ripple with this said unregistered security. Because at the end of the day, the SEC had to approve the deal with MoneyGram. And it was obviously publicly noted that MoneyGram was going to use XRP to settle, and they reported on it often about using the benefits of it between the Mexican peso and the US dollar corridor. Come on in. The fact that the SEC approved that partnership and allowed that activity to go on with said unregistered security actually makes the SEC complicit in facilitating that deal. You look back at FinCEN, the 2015 decision, and how they actually made a decision and determination from FinCEN that it was a virtual currency. And after that, in 2015, the SEC allowed Ripple to continue to build out their enterprise and the use of XRP. Complicit. Dereliction of duty. That's what we're looking at here from the SEC. Now, make no mistake about it. I'm not here to pick apart line by line what that lawsuit says. I know that there's a lot of people raising Cain right now about what Brad or Chris have done with their personal holdings. I don't expect anybody who has personal holdings to not spend it and do things that they want for themselves. I mean, people do it all the time. You know, it's if you're spending Ripple's funds that it becomes an issue to me. But I'm going to let the courts decide that, because I know that Chris Larsen has been around in this internet game for a long time. Remember eProsper? Yeah, that was Chris Larsen, the first ever loan program on the internet. He's been in this game and dealt with the gray areas of learning how to sculpt what needs to happen to introduce new products, businesses, and services through the internet. Brad Garlinghouse the same way. You know, whether it's Hightail or Yellowtail, whatever it was called there, and Yahoo. I mean, you know, these guys have an incredible depth and wealth of knowledge in this space. You're not going to trip them up for some little basic stuff. I think the other thing to look at too is that there's no fraud allegations here. There's no, you know, it's just a matter of saying that, you know, this was an unregistered security. And I will reemphasize again that I personally believe, and believe me, that and 50 cents won't get you a cup of coffee. But my personal perspective on the matter is just simply this. It's like, you know, this lawsuit has to happen. We need the SEC and the new division that they have launched for digital assets to have the same kind of test that the SEC currently has to determine whether something is a security or not, which is the Howey test. The Howey test came from the Supreme Court decision of the SEC versus Howey. From that, they developed the Howey test, the four-prong test to determine if something is a security or not. Well, I can tell you from the four-prong test, you can tell that one of those prongs does not line up. But I digress. I think the larger narrative here is understanding that legal precedent needs to be set. And because Ripple and XRP are so important to this entire digital asset space, it has to go this path. Is it scary? For some people, yes, absolutely. Are you concerned? You hear about people trading halts and delisting and all of these things? Sure. It can be scary. But you know what? We've never had a legal decision on what XRP actually is or what the XRP ledger is. The closest we've ever come is to hear a regulator like Brian Brooks say that the XRP ledger is a payment network, just like the other crypto blockchains and DLT. So when I boil all this down, what I see doesn't look as scary to me at this point. Because what I see is what had to happen all along. I think there's been many people acknowledge at this point that the framework to determine what digital assets are doesn't really jive with the Howey test. So getting that legal precedent from this lawsuit with the SEC, which I feel is obviously very, very flawed, as I just pointed out a couple huge points right there. I feel like they've obviously set the stage to really lean in to say, look, we've given you the best case possible. We've waited 7 years to do this, which shows a lot of neglect and dereliction of duty. It shows we've been complicit in other areas, like letting you build out the enterprise after FinCEN, and just like being complicit in approving the deal with MoneyGram and allowing MoneyGram to use an unregistered security for settlement in their business. So when I think about these things, it becomes very easy for me to take a sigh of relief and say to myself, you know, I believe this is the path we needed to go from the very beginning. Once we have this legal distinction and precedent about what we are, and we know what we are, right? But whatever they come up with, I don't believe they're going to come up with something that shoots the United States' golden goose right in the foot. I don't believe they're going to do that because the rest of the world hasn't done it either. So this is about clarity, and that's exactly what I think we're going to get. Now, moving on here, let's build on this notion too, because the top 5 accounts accumulated almost $30 million in 3 hours. Oh, brother. You can't make it up. While everybody else is jumping out like paratroopers out of an airplane. Go, go, go. The top 5 accounts have accumulated almost 30 million in 3 hours. Now, what is it they know that you don't? If you're scared, say you're scared. I'm not going anywhere. When I look at this, those are the things that reinforce. Now, look, we got another angle, another front that we got to be reminded of. Chris Giancarlo talks about imposing KYC rules on private wallet holders is premised on flawed assumption that independent cryptocurrency dealings are inherently illegitimate and undeserving of personal privacy, even if conducted for lawful purposes. Tell it, Chris. Yeah. Chris also happens to be counsel to Ripple. Right. And he also wrote a dissertation that explains that not only is Ripple not a security, it's actually a currency. He is the former head of the Commodities Futures Trade Commission. Yeah. Good one, Chris. And look, you can see all fronts here. Tether's getting attacked, which is obviously going to be by default very bad for Bitcoin. If you don't know that they would go in through Tether, buy up a bunch of Tether, and then blow up Bitcoin, push the market, and then let retail do the rest, don't believe it. It's still true. There's trouble coming there. And then here we have a clip from RDXP, who lays down a 17-minute mark about the SEC lawsuit for a poker company that was actually allowing you to buy a piece of each poker player in a tournament and then share in those winnings. The SEC decided to sue them and claim that they were actually a security product that they were offering, and they were unregistered. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just play this because I feel like it really gives you what you need to see here. Let me just play this.
We have pros, we have semi-pros, we have recreational players.
And listen to what they say.
It basically gives anybody a chance to try to raise money to play in events. It's really allowing folks to safely and securely and transparently back somebody and know what's happening and know they're going to get paid.
Backers and players come from 109 different countries. Despite a smaller user base, YouStake also attracts top players to sell action, including Greg Raymer, Todd Brunson, Phil Hellmuth, Johnny Chan, and Mike Matisow.
I can give some numbers. It's a private company, so I can't do all, but I can tell you that we've got well over 14,000 users on our system today. We've been growing that about 4x year over year. Our revenue has been going up. We've been pretty much doubling almost every year.
Staking may not have been new for the poker community, but it was for the mainstream. And with any new concept, problems can arise.
Not long after I became general counsel to YouStake, and we were taking care to sort of button up all of its affairs and make sure everything was squeaky clean in case prying eyes ever looked at its books, we discovered that prying eyes were in fact going to be looking at its books. YouStake received a subpoena from the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, which had launched an investigation into its activities.
It was an investigation by the SEC into YouStake and the business.
And the SEC was basically looking into whether or not YouStake was involved in the purchase and sale of securities, because people are buying pieces of poker players, and those poker players are going to go make or lose money for their backer based on what happens in a game.
Up to that point, we had gotten quite a bit of press, so I don't know if that's what drew their attention to it.
YouStake was ready for this scrutiny because it was a squeaky clean operation that was doing everything above board. So the first thing we did was assess the scope of the subpoena, produce documents, and every time the SEC said jump, we said how high. We turned over, I believe, tens of thousands of pages of documents.
Long story short, it took forever. So then we finally said, you know what? There's a couple outcomes that come from this. So let us put an application in to FINRA, and FINRA being the licensing arm, basically, of the SEC. So we put an application in for a crowdfunding license.
And I get a phone call from FINRA a couple weeks later saying, please withdraw your application. And my jaw sort of hits the ground. I don't really know why they do this. And I pressed the guy and I said, why? He says, well, it's not really a security. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, that's strange. So look at the guy from FINRA on the phone. I say, hold on 1 second. Call my associate, tell her to come into the room. And I say, sir, please repeat that. And he says, we don't think it's a security because you can't fill out a balance sheet. And that's true. You're not buying and selling a piece of an entity. A poker player doesn't have a balance sheet. A poker player cannot go on the New York Stock Exchange, right? Like if a poker player had to list his or her assets, we're pretty much talking about kidneys and other vital organs, which I'm fairly confident you can't sell in the United States anyway.
To show good faith, we went dark. The site was still there, people could still post, but we did no overt advertising at all, no social, nothing. We just went quiet.
Ustake wasn't getting answers in a timely fashion and losing money. That's when their attorney made a decision that was unprecedented.
I said, all right, we want to bring an end to this. Let's file a lawsuit against the SEC, seeking a declaratory judgment, which is a judicial decree basically, that staking is not the purchase or sale of a security. And I think this caught a lot of people off guard because it's always the SEC that's going out and suing someone.
We started going through that process, and that's when the SEC came back and said, no, it's okay. We're dropping everything. You're good to go.
And we reached an agreement that we would dismiss the case, so no precedent was made. Investigation's over, and it is the SEC's stated position, as sought in discovery in federal court, that Ustake was not dealing in securities.
And there you have it. And that goes to show you the mess. Now, I know the system is not exactly laid out for Ustake exactly like it is for XRP. Excuse me. But what I wanted to highlight out of this is simply the fact that look at the confusion between something like FINRA and the SEC, and look at what it took for them to be able to get the SEC off of their back. Imagine how that outcome would have turned out had Ustake not taken a proactive approach. You know, the fact that there has been tolling agreements going on since 2019 with the SEC means that Ripple has constantly been in backdoor negotiations with Ripple to resolve this matter. Again, I want to reinforce that I think that there is no other way for XRP to get to its final destination than to have a legal decision that is absolutely in stone what XRP is. What is its full intended scale use? Let's remind ourselves. That's the back-end settlement, wholesale settlement for central banks, derivatives. You're talking trillions of dollars, if not quadrillion or more of dollars. That's what we're talking about here. And if we're really talking about that level of money and that level of settlement, which I believe we are, then you better believe for that 3 to 4 seconds that it's on that payment network, as Brian Brooks refers to blockchain and DLT systems. If it's going to be on our payment rail for 3 to 4 seconds, you better bet your bottom dollar they're going to have a legal understanding about what that payment network is and who's liable for it. Now let's keep moving here, because as the dominoes fall in this space, I want to remind you, the U.S. District Judge Annalisa Torres has asked Ripple and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission whether they are willing to consent to a magistrate judge to conserve resources and promote judicial efficiency. Now, excuse me. This is important to note because I just showed you John L. Vitre, who has been absolutely on fire in this space, reminded us that when there's cases in the Southern District of New York, which is where this case is with the SEC and Ripple, you are assigned 2 judges, a district judge and a magistrate judge. And it comes down here to determine, and tells us in here, referrals to a magistrate judge allow for that judge to make recommendations to the district judge when it comes to either moving things along and keeping the process, moving in a orderly fashion, or whether it comes to a summary decision or to resolve a motion, such as a motion to dismiss and things of that nature. And the magistrate judge could issue to the district judge a recommendation on those things. So the important thing to remember about this is that even though the pre-trial conference is scheduled for February 22nd, If there's two judges, just like what we see here, and they're willing to accept the magistrate judge to conserve resources and promote judicial efficiency, we could see a settlement any time. It doesn't mean that the trial won't go to trial. It doesn't mean that we won't go to distance. It could do that too, right? But the reality is it could settle a lot sooner than any of us even realize. And we already know that the SEC is a pretty crappy case. But one thing I am sure of is we need a legal decision, a precedent on this asset. Or otherwise, I don't feel like the real intended parties that can bring the actual level of utility that we need can use this payment network until we have it. And that's been the holdup all along in my eyes. Now, looking at this, I want to play this to you because this is what Brian Brooks was saying to us on December 4th. I know you probably have heard it, but wait till you hear it again now that we've seen everything over the last week or so going on with all the lawsuits flying around like little party invitations. Hold on.
Should we be expecting some new regulations by the end of the Trump term?
I think you're going to see a lot of good news for crypto by the end of the Trump term. Some of it's going to have to do with banks connecting to blockchain. Some of it's going to be more clarity around the nature of these assets. So believe me, there's going to be very positive messages coming out. At the same time, it's a dangerous world out there. We have to be honest about that. But nobody's going to ban Bitcoin. Nobody's going to ban some of these transmission technologies. I think it's going to be a lot less bad than people were worried about.
No one's going to ban Bitcoin. No one's going to ban these other technologies, right? You're just seeing the exchanges try to get themselves in a position where they're not drug into a lawsuit themselves, just in the manner that we see Coinbase is now being sued. Right? That's the reality. And that was on December 4th. We are now here at the end of December. And I want to wish all of you a very happy new year. And I tell you, I've already signed off that at least the first 6 months of this is going to be jammed up with the whole pandemic and the mask and all of this business, which I'm absolutely sick and tired of. And I know that it's a very real thing. But I have to say, so is being sick and tired of it. So when I look at this, I say to myself, okay, we're 4 weeks in, give or take here a day or so. What is going to begin to unfold? Because in the last week, what we've seen, I believe, is that rollout of what needs to happen to begin to address this space and really take it to a place that becomes more legitimate in the sense of it looking a lot more like the traditional conventional markets when we come out the other side of this thing. Now, does that mean it'll absolutely be 6 to 8 weeks to the day? I don't know. And it doesn't matter. The point being is that he's saying over the short term, we are about to see a lot of clarity roll out in this space. And the way that you really get clarity is to sue somebody and get legal precedent on the matter. Now, looking at this before we get out of here, because this is the last day of 2020, year of the digital asset. Yeah, 0.2141. That's where we're at this morning here with XRP. We are down 5.6%, ranging between 23 and 20 cents now. And I have to say, I did fill the bags the other day. So I'm just doing what I've always been doing. I'm stacking my pennies next to their dollars. And until they change, I'm not changing either. This is not financial advice. Hit that like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Share with somebody you know. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And check out all the links in the description box and the comment section. And I believe this might be the last day of that Christmas sale going on of 88 or 90% off Pure VPN. Make sure you check it out. I'll catch all of you on the next one.